We're back, and we're continuing our conversation about the practice of political warfare here at home. And I couldn't be more pleased to be talking with a man who has demonstrated his proficiency in the democratic version of that. That is, small d, democratic version. His name is George Rasley. He is a highly accomplished political campaigner, having served on some 300 of them over the years at all levels of government. He was, among other things, a senior advisor to the Vice President of the United States, and these days is the managing editor of Richard Viguery's Conservative HQ. He's one of the smartest guys I know, and always delighted to have him here on Hearing America. George, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Frank. I have the wounds to show for those 300 campaigns I've been involved in. So,
You do. Bloodied but unbowed, as they say. George, let me ask you about something I talked about briefly earlier with Rebecca Weber of AMAC, namely the march through the institutions that enemies within, cultural Marxists, I guess is the term that's usually applied to them, have been engaged in, and whether we're at the brink of their success in penetrating arguably the last of our institutions, and certainly one of the most important, namely the Supreme Court, with the impending, expected confirmation of Judge Katanya Brown Jackson. Your thoughts both on that thesis and this particular nominee?
well, I think that thesis is 100% correct, and that Judge Brown Jackson is the epitome of its success. Um, she has been a cultural Marxist, which is a good term to describe him, since she was in college. Her record is replete with evidence of that, and it is particularly concerning because she has kind of said the quiet part out loud that one of their prime goals is not just excusing but normalizing pedophilia and the sexual abuse of children, the sexualization of children at a very young age. And so this is really a new front in that war. Normally, we think of Marxism as being a economic argument primarily, or one about the role of the state and property and what have you. But this is an entirely new front in that war.
It is indeed. And another manifestation of it, and I don't know that she has applied this term to the various felons she has given very lenient treatment to in sentencing whenever she's been able to do so, I think on 8 occasions. Uh, the so-called minor attracted persons is a classic sort of leftist euphemism to normalize, as you say, um, some of the most odious and dangerous of criminals. And to put a fine point on it, as you know, what we're talking about are people who either engage themselves or simply purvey to untold numbers of others child rape and torture and other forms of horrific abuse. Richard, it's really unspeakable that this would be something that a Supreme Court justice would countenance, let alone excuse. And to what extent, connect the dots for me, if you would. To what extent does that evidence a more broad radicalism, if not, full-on cultural Marxist character?
Well, the one of the essential features of cultural Marxism is normalizing the abnormal and tearing down what the norms of Western civilization and replacing them with a new civilization based on these Marxist principles. This goes back to Leninism and the establishment of the Soviet Union, where one of their goals was to create a new man, the new Soviet man, the new Soviet woman. Well, the new American man or woman, in the eyes of the cultural Marxists, will accept all these perverse sexual practices that have been um, prohibited by Western civilization for 2,000 years. They will um, countenance the trafficking of children. They will do or accept among their neighbors practices that we just, we can barely talk about on TV. And the whole idea is to destroy the mores of Western civilization, the things that have made us unique, the things that have created um, the social structures that lead to the quality of life and the fabulous civilization that was America.
Yeah. You haven't used the term, but I know it's implicit in what you've said about Western civilization and American values and qualities, George Rasley. Is the moral and theological underpinnings of our country, of our republic, and the destruction of those is very much of a piece with this larger design of enemies of this country, cultural Marxists and other leftists who seek to take it down and, as you say, replace it with something far worse. George, we're going to have to take a short break here in just a moment, but when we come back, I want to visit with you about what this prospective elevation of such a radical to the Supreme Court is likely to mean for the court itself, for the other 8 members of it today, for the kinds of people who may be appointed to it in the future, for that matter. And to what extent, particularly, does the fact that Black Lives Matter, the organizational leadership at least, has endorsed and helped ensure the selection of this particular Black female when the president insisted that that's the only kind of person he was going to consider?